We'll just jump right into the questions. So Sasha, you can take over and we can also start recording right now.
Oh yeah, also feel free, like after I answer any question, if you're still confused or you have more questions, like you can literally just jump in and like ask me a follow-up question if you have more. Okay. So first, why did I apply to the UCs? Okay, I think the answer to this one's pretty self-explanatory. I think if you're a California student, you should always be applying to the UCs. It's great, you get subsidized tuition, you know, like we literally have spots reserved in these schools, like as California students. So I think it's just really smart. Also for me, like I always knew I wanted to stay in California. I think going out of state, even though I considered a couple schools, I feel like the climate, like the weather, the food, it was just like unmatched. So I definitely wanted to stay in California. Next, what is my major? So I got into UCLA as an applied math major, but I decided I wanted to go more of like the biotech route and possibly pre-med. So I ended up switching to computational bio, which is essentially just a combination of like CS, math, and bio. It is still in the College of Letters and Science, though. It's not in the School of Engineering. Okay. What are your thoughts on applying for a major that's easier to get into and then transferring to another major? Okay. So for the UCs, I think this is is more of a school by school thing, but within UCLA specifically, we have a couple colleges like the College of Letters and Sciences, the College of Arts and Architecture, Henry Samuel A School of Engineering. And so I think it depends on the school. For the College of Letters and Science specifically, they say that your major choice will not impact whether you get in or not. However, if you think you are lacking in extracurriculars or GPA for those classes that pertain to the major you want to apply to, then I think if you're applying to a College of Letters and Science major, it could be beneficial to apply to something that aligns more strongly with your extracurriculars and your GPA. But for engineering, it's a little more competitive because you get direct admission into that particular major. You can also go undeclared engineering, but if you're doing an engineering major, I'd suggest doing exactly what major you want to do. I did apply for the major that I wanted just because my app also aligned with that, so it just made sense for me. What makes up the UC application? So the UC application has a couple components. I think it's pretty similar to the Common App in that, like, you know, you have to fill out your address, family history, you know, like what's your parents' jobs and your address, all of those basic things. I guess where it's a little different is, unlike the Common application, you have a lot more space to talk about your activities. I know they took down the amount of characters that you can have this year, but you generally have a lot of space to describe your activities. I think it's about 20 spots, and it's for a combination of awards and activities. And usually you want to really make sure that you're making as much use as possible of all of those spots on the application. You don't necessarily need to fill out the entire activity section, though. I will say that. I think I'll get to that more later. When did or should you start working on apps? So I started working on my UC application maybe around like 2 months before, but I didn't start like really working on it the month before the application was due. And fun but sad story, don't do what I did. I wrote one of my UC essays the day before I submitted my application. The UC application is known to like crash around like on the 30th of November, which is when everyone's trying to get it in, but I did submit it 3 days early. So you want to make sure that you're just working on your application early enough that you can avoid the potential crash at the end. Although I don't think it happened like when I applied. Also, it totally depends on the pace you work at. Like for me, the way I worked on my essays was literally, once I got an idea, I used to literally pull all-nighters to finish those essays because that's just like what I enjoyed doing. I didn't really work on them slowly and consistently, so it was fine for me to have like a little less time to work on them. What was your unweighted GPA and what classes did you take? What were your other stats? So my unweighted GPA was a 4.0. Hari, can you switch back to the question slide, please?
I'm sorry, I don't know why that keeps happening, sorry.
All right, no problem. What classes did I take? I took like all the science classes. So I took AP Stats, AP Bio, AP Physics, AP Chem, and I took Calc, which wasn't I know it's not an AP for us, but I did end up taking the AP Calculus test just in case. Usually when we have Chapman Calculus at Northwood High School, it still transfers to other schools, so you don't necessarily need to take the AP test, but it's pretty helpful if you want to like apply to the Ivies or anything like that, because they won't accept Chapman credit. I think it's a smart thing to do. Oh yeah, and I took all honors courses. An AP I didn't take was AP Lit. I personally do not like analytical English that much. I like creative writing a lot more, so I ended up not taking AP Lit. I took, what's the word? Contemplit, yeah. What were your other stats? So I got a 35 on the ACT, and then I also took 3 subject tests. I took a subject test for math, physics, and chem. I don't remember my exact scores. I know I got an 800 on math, and I got like a 770 or 780 on chem and physics. What were your extracurriculars? So I had a couple main extracurriculars, but on the UC app, you have those 20 spots for both like awards and the extracurriculars. So I was able to fill up a lot more space that way. I guess one of the extracurriculars I did was holding like STEM workshops. I'm not going to go super in depth into it, but like I held math workshops in Orange County, and I think that definitely helped in terms of the major I was applying for. Another extracurricular that I had was I was a research intern at UCI for about a year. It got cut off because of Corona, so it would have been around 2 years by then. And that was also more of like the computational, like biology kind of side of it. So it definitely helped in terms of like creating like more of a STEM oriented application. What else? I'm kind of blanking out here, but I was also a part of student debate. It was a very big thing in my high school career. And I got to state twice. And I was like I was on board my senior year for that, but I was very consistent with it. So even though I was only on board 1 year, I still had a lot to show for the fact that I was in speech and debate. And then similarly, I was also one of the vice presidents of Key Club. I had to drop that due to speech and debate conflict, but I was still a very active member, and I received the President's Volunteer Service Award. So those are like a couple of the extracurriculars. I can't remember like the exact details of everything at this point, but that's like a brief overview. What did you write about in your essays, and do you have any tips or advice? Okay, so I guess I'll start this with your essays should always be about some character trait you want to portray rather than an extended version of your activity section. Something that I think a lot of people like to do is they're like, I only have 200 words to do my activity here, or sorry, like 200 characters to write my activity here. So I'm just going to describe it in depth, like what the activity is, so that I sound impressive. But that's not really what you want to do. What you want to be doing is like write down a couple character traits about yourself and think of what stories or like specific aspects out of the movies or like out of your life in general you can use in order to help the admissions officers know more about you. They already know that like you volunteered, but why do they care beyond what you already have in your activities section? Maybe you can talk about a time you communicated with a child and you were able to, you know, help them feel more involved, or so that shows that you're inclusive. So things like that. I think your essays should definitely be centered around character traits, and that way it helps bring out a side of you that won't necessarily be seen through like specific activities. So as for my essays, I wrote an essay. I know I wrote an essay about speech and debate. So I wrote about how I used to lose a lot and I worked really hard to get better at it over time, and how I used to get really bogged down by losing all the time. And it just kind of showed more like determination, the hard work I'm willing to put into something. There was a creativity prompt. I wrote a little bit about music and how that's helped me feel more like connected to my culture, how I've used piano in order to do outreach in the community, things like that. Another essay, I believe, was about my research internship. I was one of the youngest people in my lab, so I was talking about kind of like my struggle with that and how I was, able to feel more accepted in that space, in like that academic space. And I believe my final essay was kind of like a community service-ish essay. So I used that one to talk more about like my passion for math and specifically what I would be able to contribute to the UCs that way. How were you able to summarize everything you had done throughout high school in only a couple hundred words? I feel like this is definitely subjective, but I think people get a little too wordy. I think if you're concise and very meaningful, purposeful with your word choice, you should be able to summarize pretty well, like all of the things you've done throughout high school. So like in an activity section or an essay, for example, you don't need to say, I walked into the classroom and I had a very good time, because everyone already knows, right? You need to make sure that your activity section is strictly just describing that activity so they know what you technically did throughout high school. And then your essay is where you're really able to talk about your character a little more in depth. So I think it's really just prioritizing what you want to show about yourself. Obviously, like, you're going to get to give your entire life story, but quite frankly, like, admissions officers don't have time to read your entire life story either. So you need to be able to prioritize, like, these are my good character traits. This is what I did throughout high school. Like, this is important and this is probably not going to make a difference. And that'll definitely help in terms of like summarizing what you did throughout high school. Are college counselors and essay editors helpful in your opinion? Okay, so I personally did not have a college counselor or any essay editors. I enjoy creative writing a lot, even though I don't enjoy like analytical English, like reading Pride and Prejudice and stuff like that was just like not for me. But I definitely had a really fun time with creative writing because it's largely narrative style depending. I think for the UCs, you want to stray a little bit less away from narrative style and go a little more like objectively, because I mean, admissions officers from the UCs have stated they like it more when you're like concrete and not necessarily like an abstract story. But yeah, I mean, they definitely can be really helpful, especially with brainstorming and anything like that. Shameless plug, I do edit essays. So if you are interested in that, like, you can contact me after this. I don't know how many of you guys are seniors or juniors or whatever, but like in the future, if you ever need any help on your college essays, I am here to help out. I think they can help a lot in terms of like brainstorming ideas and kind of refining like sentences, maybe making like sentences more purposeful. But I did not use them. I did not use them because I was just willing to put in like hours and hours and hours. Like, I'm pretty sure out of the week I spent at least, I don't know, maybe like 30 hours just like writing essays during college app season. So it definitely depends. Why do I think I got accepted? Oh, to be honest, I don't know. I don't think there's like a single answer. I definitely think that in terms of statistics, I definitely like met the bar, but there isn't necessarily a bar for the UCs. They're definitely becoming more holistic, because I know people who got 4.0 GPAs and like still didn't get in because their only extracurricular activity was maybe when they like volunteered for like 10 hours their like sophomore year. So I think you definitely need to have kind of like the best of both worlds. You need to have some combination of GPA, like a rigorous high school courses, but you also need to have some extracurriculars to show your passion outside of the classroom. I can't give you like a single reason why I think I got accepted. I do think that I had extracurriculars that showed my passion, and I think that as long as you show passion in your application, you have a very good chance of getting in. As long as you've worked diligently throughout high school, I think that, you should be very proud of yourself, And honestly, the UC admissions is, a little different from private admissions. Obviously, they get a lot more applications, They're not looking at your application for hours on end. So as long as your application is able to make an impact in that small amount of time, like your chances look pretty good. I don't want to say necessarily, I don't know how to speak on behalf of like UCLA and Berkeley. It definitely depends. With anything below an acceptance rate of like, I guess like 30%, I don't want to like set, you know, a percentage, but I mean, I'd say anything below like 30%, it really depends. You need to see if you meet the GPA, SAT scores, and like look at past students, because even then, you know, people with 2.0 GPAs have gotten accepted. You know, people with like 1100 SATs have gotten accepted. So it totally depends. Oh, okay. So what do I think is the most important to UC admissions officers? Well, I kind of answered the question. I don't particularly know. I definitely think that GPA and standardized tests are more of a filter, and that they're like, okay, you meet this like GPA cutoff. Sure. Not that they have a GPA cutoff, right? It's like every year the UCs kind of decide like what kind of students they want to admit. Like they kind of get like a quota kind of thing. Like you're going to accept students with this kind of profile or this kind of profile. So there's no one thing that's the most important. They're definitely becoming more holistic. So I don't think I can pinpoint any one thing. I definitely say UCLA is known for being very like high stats based. So for that one, I would say it's definitely more like GPA standardized tests oriented. But overall, they're pretty holistic, and they will do their best to look at your entire application. How much is the tuition? So the tuition is, my tuition this year is $13,000, $13,200, which is another reason you should apply to UC. I know a lot of people going to private schools who are paying about 3 to 4 times that amount just for their tuition. And then on top of that, they also have to pay for their rooming and board. So our tuition is $13,000. It's not cheap, but it is relatively less. Unfortunately, higher education is very expensive, which is pretty sad to me. But I would say start applying for scholarships early. So like I received a scholarship, so I'm actually only paying around like $3,000 or $4,000 to attend UCLA this year, because I was able to get like a lot of money in scholarships, and it's definitely helped me a lot. It's definitely just helped me a lot, you know, with like financial security, so I don't have to be scared of being extraordinarily in debt after I graduate. Also, I think public schools in general are just great if you're planning on pursuing like graduate school or like medical school, because those are things that'll definitely put you in debt. So, you know, make your choice carefully. But yeah, that's all I have to say. But if you guys have any additional questions that you have for me, please just jump in.
Okay, sounds great. Let me just stop sharing so I can see the chat. Okay, so I guess we'll just take a few minutes to like, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat, I guess, or you can DM me privately. We'll just wait till like 3:53.
Sounds good.
Okay, the first question. Though we are going through this COVID situation, COVID, I think she means, COVID situation, what has been your favorite and least favorite parts of going to UCLA?
I guess my least favorite part is that I can't actually go. I'm sitting in my room right now. I've kind of converted it into a dorm room. So I have little, you know, bins on the side just to kind of feel like I'm more of a college student. But I definitely think what's a little disappointing is that it's definitely harder to, you know, communicate with people. But that being said, you know, like online classes, they're okay. I think usually they're definitely doing their best to make sure that we get enough as much interaction with the professor as possible. Classes are large. Arguably, Berkeley has much larger classes, but you know, my classes, like some of my lectures, some of them have like 300 people. But they have a lot of teaching assistants make sure to hold a lot of office hours, and like so does the professor, and that's kind of like a smaller setting. So like if you decide to go, you're able to communicate with the professor directly and like ask your questions. So I mean, I don't think this is anything necessarily unique to the UCs, but I do think, you know, like UCLA has been doing a pretty good job of like trying to like stay in contact with the students and like trying to keep that interaction. I like that. This is something I've talked about with other people. This is more of like the social aspect. I've heard that people at UCLA like have a really, really hard time like finding friends, because, you know, when you're just seeing people for like an hour in class, it's like you don't really have as much of an incentive because you're like, oh, I'll see them again tomorrow. So you don't really bother to make friends with them. Or like people are joining clubs in person, so you feel like everyone else has friends and you don't. And I think this is a COVID thing. It's like everyone's become a lot more bold to just be like, hey, like I don't have friends, so let's be friends. And it's just made everyone, I don't know, I don't know, it's just made it a lot easier to have friends. I think it's kind of like set a new norm to just like DM people you want to be friends with, which is nice. I also like that I'm definitely more of an independent learner, you know, so like sitting at home and like doing things here is just giving me more of like a quiet environment to get adjusted to my very first quarter, instead of like being distracted by like parties or like people's drama. You know, you can kind of just like isolate yourself from all that, which is a nice thing.
Okay, awesome. We have a couple more. So did you play any sports throughout high school?
I didn't. I was in dance in high school only until sophomore year. So I was in like dance 3 in sophomore year. I'm not a very athletic person, so I did not end up doing any sports in high school. But I mean, it obviously, anything helps, especially if that's what you're passionate about.
Okay. And another one, which scholarships are beneficial to apply to?
Okay, so I don't have any specific names of scholarships. You kind of have to look them up according to your personal situation. But the scholarship I got, which is like the reason I stopped applying to scholarships, was like $9,000, and it was from um, like I think Northwood High School started this new last year's like the Beckman Legacy like scholarship competition, and it's in which you have to like implement your original research project in like spectrophotometry, and like I was one of the top winners. I got a scholarship for it. But I guess another scholarship that I received, and this is not something that I currently have, like I didn't accept the scholarship, is like from Berkeley, because I did get invited for Regents, so I got into Berkeley early. I didn't end up getting Regents. However, I ended up getting a separate scholarship called the SEED Scholarship. It's an engineering like science scholarship, and it's for it was for like $10,000, and that's a separate thing I applied to because I got into Berkeley in like their early round. But I didn't, like other scholarships I applied to were like very small, like $1,000 scholarships. I didn't end up getting them. I mean, I'm assuming because a lot of people ended up like applying to them. But yeah, I think you can look on, what is it? There's like a couple sites. I'll see if I can't like recall them right now. But if you just like, you know, put in your age, like ethnicity, you can get like very specific scholarships. It might make it easier to get. I didn't end up applying to that many after I got like the $10,000 one, because I was like, you know, there's not really like that big of a point for me. But yeah.
All right, okay, we have actually another question. So why did you end up choosing to go to UCLA? So this is kind of different from like the applying thing. So like obviously you got into like a lot of amazing schools. So how did you narrow it down for your major and stuff?
Okay, so for me, my ultimate decision came down to, it was between Claremont McKenna College, UC Berkeley, and UCLA. And I had a really, really hard time deciding between these because what happened is the day UCLA admissions came out, and then the week after I got rejected from Regents for Berkeley. So I was like, okay, great. Like, I'll go to UCLA because I like it. You know, like I really like so personally. And from my conversations with people, I just like, this is very subjective. Please do not take my word for it. Most of the UCLA students I've seen have been just like a lot less stressed out in general. But that could also be because the people I know from Berkeley are like CS, very stressful major, but it's amazing for the major. Like if you get into Berkeley for CS, like you should definitely go. But yeah, I just really love the vibe, you know, and I talked to a lot of, you know, other Northwood students who ended up going to UCLA, and they were like, wow, we love it. Like you will not regret it. And the food is amazing. SoCal is better than NorCal in my totally non-biased opinion. It's just so much better. And the campus is beautiful. Yeah, I just think it has a really good balance of like that fun social life with the academics. And I thought it was just best for me. Also, because I might be pre-med, I decided to go with UCLA. Berkeley's known for like grade deflation. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know a couple pre-meds at UCLA, and they've been telling me like it's fine. Like pre-med classes are hard everywhere, but I just thought that would be the better balance for me. So that's what I decided on.
Okay, another question is, sorry, I hope this isn't too much, but
Oh, no problem.
another question. Thank you. So another question is like, how are you? So obviously now that it's COVID, we kind of have like a completely different situation than you guys did. I think your year, or especially even the seniors this year, I think it's totally different because like all the test centers are like closed and stuff. So how would you, like if you were in our position, how do you think that would like affect our admissions? Like, do you think they'll switch over more to like looking at extracurriculars? Like, what do you think they're gonna do with that whole situation?
To be honest, I don't even know if they know what they're gonna do with the situation. I don't know if it'll necessarily be more on extracurriculars, but without a standardized test, I definitely think they're gonna be like, they're just gonna be forced to look more like school specifically. You're normally only competing against people in your anyways, but I think in this situation, they're just gonna be scrutinizing your GPA a lot more, which is like, it can be helpful, but it all sucks because it depends whether you're a good like standardized test taker or not. Like I know I definitely had a hard time taking my standardized test because I get really stressed out, but it can either help or not help. Yeah, I don't have like a definite answer for that. I think they're just going to be comparing your GPA a lot more to like kids in your school rather than people outside, right? The point of the standardized test is that like GPAs in every school is not the same. Like I know kids who got into UCLA who have like 4.9 GPAs, like no one, that's not even possible at our school, you know? So I definitely think they're just going to be comparing a lot more in terms of like what that class is looking like. And I think with that, it's definitely possible they're going to be looking more at the extracurriculars because they're like, you didn't have to take standardized tests, so I hope you're making use of your time. But yeah.
Okay, definitely makes sense. This is going to be the last question, but obviously you have like amazing stats, which is like very clear from like what you said and everything. Also, you had great extracurriculars, but like in the like education in the school department, like do you have any tips for juniors and seniors as to like how to kind of juggle all this stress and how to like manage time and maybe study for standardized tests better or anything like that?
This is a really, okay, so I took one practice ECT for ACT. So um, I guess, I think for me what helped is because I can be a very big stress ball. I definitely do badly on things when I stress out more about them. So like ironically for me, like not over prepping helped me because I like, trust me, like prepared you to standardized tests. Like you don't need to stress yourself out like that much over them. I think the main reason people end up doing worse than they like think they should do is because they like kind of get into this like panic zone, like an, oh my god, like what's the trick to solve this problem, but like you know how to do it. And I think it helped me because I was just kind of I took the ACT like kind of for fun. I was like, I'm probably going to need to take it again, so let me just do it. And I ended up doing well on it. And I think it's just relax. I think it's really important to like just kind of not yourself, it's not the end of the world. Even if you need to take it like 2 times, it is not the end of the world, you know? Every time you take it, just be like, I gotta do this, and like take it. Also, are you talking about like balancing like kind of balancing extracurriculars and like schoolwork?
Yeah, like I just mean like in terms of like if you have like a huge test coming up next or like multiple tests, how do you kind of allocate your time for it, like in terms of like AP classes and all the like work that they give you and stuff? Like do you have any tips
Okay,
for like time management? I mean.
sure. Okay. So I definitely think you should not model yourself after me in my junior year, because I used to study for my tests like during lunch. Although I like, and that's more because of my schedule than anything else. Like I ended up having like AP physics and like AP chem and like calculus all in the same day, you know? So I just had a really hard time being able to all of those, like studying for all of those classes at the same time. So I used to be like, oh, maybe today I'll study for, you know, my chem test tomorrow. But then during physics, I'll study for my calculus test, which is a really bad idea. Don't do it. Don't tell Dr. Matsuda I did that. But that's what I did. But by the time I got to senior year, I definitely got my schedule way more together. And this is what you should be doing. Recognize how much time you spend on Netflix and YouTube. There's like delete TikTok, please. Like you do not realize you'll literally look up and an hour will be gone, and that's an hour you could have spent studying. So I think the biggest thing for me was just eliminating distractions, because in senior year I was taking the same amount of AP classes, and then I was also taking multivariable calculus outside of school, and that's something I literally studied 4 hours a day for. And I wouldn't have had that time if I was like just like sitting on TikTok, or if I was like watching YouTube like funny video compilations for like 2 hours, you know? So just be very smart about how you spend your time. I'm not saying like you can't relax, but that's very different from like laying down on your bed at like 3 p.m. after you get home and like scrolling through TikTok until like 6. And then you're like, where did the also especially juggling college apps at the same, it is just not possible. Personally, yeah, I just went into like high efficiency mode. It's just about being efficient. There's enough time to do everything as long as you're not wasting your time.
Okay. Yeah, those are all of our questions. Thank you so much for
Of
coming, and thank you
course,
so much for answering all of our questions. And yeah, you guys are free to leave, and
I am glad to help. Hopefully this helped somewhat.
yeah,
um,